Long before our modern world hummed with electricity and the glow of city lights, there was a time when stories were carried on the wind, shared under the canopy of stars, and whispered beside crackling fires. In those quiet, ancient nights, people gazed upward at the heavens and downward at the mysteries of the earth, wondering why suffering came and where hope was born. They shaped these wonders into stories, soft vessels for deeper truths, and among the oldest and most enduring of these is the tale of Pandora. A story wrapped in curiosity, shaped by divine hands, and sealed with the tender presence of hope. Imagine a time where the world was still young, draped in golden light, where men lived without pain, and seasons flowed like a soft lullaby. There was no aging, no toil, no heartache. The sun warmed the land, rivers whispered through valleys, and the air carried no bitterness. This was the mythical Golden Age, gentle, serene, unbroken. Yet, even in paradise, change finds its way. For in the realm of the gods, choices were made, and consequences stirred like ripples in still water. One such ripple came in the form of a figure, carved from the clay of the earth and gifted with every charm and quality imaginable. Pandora, her name meaning all gifted, was a marvel to behold. She was neither villain nor savior, but something more delicate and more deeply human. Her story is one of transformation, of the arrival of complexity into simplicity, and of the quiet endurance of hope. And so tonight, we journey gently back to this ancient world, drifting through golden clouds to the peaks of Mount Olympus and the sun-dappled plains of early Earth. We'll explore the origin of mankind's first trials and the quiet appearance of hope itself. It's a tale as old as myth, softly told, to carry you into rest. Welcome to Sleepy Journeys, the podcast designed to lull you into a peaceful slumber with soothing stories through time, places, and ideas. Whether you're winding down after a long day or simply looking for a peaceful escape, you're in the right place. My name's Jack, and I'm so happy to have you here with me. Each night on Sleepy Journeys, we set off together on gentle adventures designed to soothe your mind and ease you into rest. You'll find journeys through history, comforting fairy tales, myths and folklore, the wonders of science, fascinating inventions, inspiring famous figures, music history, and even calm explorations around the world. No matter where your curiosity takes you, there's a dreamy, Sleepy Journeys show for you. Tonight, we're going to embark on a gentle journey through Pandora's box. And just before we fully drift off, if you're enjoying Sleepy Journeys, go ahead and tap follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're joining me on. That way, you won't miss any of our upcoming sleepy adventures. And let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us. Now, take a deep breath, and let's begin. Long, long ago, in a time before sorrow, before complexity, before even the whisper of pain, the world was quiet. It was a world untouched by struggle or fear. A world imagined with the lightness of a dream just beginning to unfold. This was the age before Pandora, before her jar was opened, before even the shape of her form was conceived in the mind of a god. It was the first age, the Golden Age, a time of luminous simplicity and gentle balance. The poets of ancient Greece, especially Hesiod, spoke of a sequence of ages, each growing progressively more challenging for humankind. But the first of these ages, the Golden Age, was unlike any other. It was said that during this age, mortals lived as if they were gods, with ease, joy, and abundance. There was no need to plant fields or build shelters against storms. The earth, in its infinite generosity, gave forth fruits unbidden. Trees bowed gently under the weight of ripe figs, olives shimmered on the branches, and grain swayed in the breeze without ever needing to be sown. There was no war in this world, no illness to darken the days, no aging to wrinkle the brow, no mourning, no farewells. People did not toil for bread or sweat beneath the sun. They did not cry out from hunger or weep from grief. Life moved with the rhythm of nature, slow, circular, complete. Under the watchful eyes of the Titans, especially Cronus, the great father of time, this age was serene and uninterrupted. Even death, when it came softly, like a drowsy dream in the afternoon sun. Imagine lying beneath a laurel tree in this age. The sky a dome of deep blue above you, the scent of honeysuckle in the air, and the sound of bees moving lazily between blossoms. No worries stir in your heart. The days pass like gentle tides, one after another, warm and welcome. Each moment is enough. Each breath is peace. But such balance, even in myth, is delicate. And though the world of the Golden Age was rich in harmony, it was also incomplete. For in this world, the gods had not yet given humanity the tools to shape, to build, to light the dark. And one god, Prometheus, saw that this world, as beautiful as it was, lacked something vital, something that would allow mortals to grow. That something was fire, and with it, knowledge, creativity, the spark of invention. And so, from the soft quiet of this earliest age, a shift began. Subtle at first, like the first cool breeze of autumn brushing through a summer grove. But it would grow. A change was coming. The kind of change that would shape myth and memory, weaving itself into the heart of every story told afterward. Before that change arrives, let us pause in this golden stillness just a little longer. Let the warmth of the sun in that perfect age linger on your skin. Let the calm of a world without hardship cradle you for a while. For soon we will walk with Prometheus, and from his hands, fire will rise. The Golden Age of men was remembered through stories, soft, poetic echoes carried across generations. These were people who lived gently, close to the rhythm of nature, untouched by sorrow or fear. To imagine their lives is to imagine a world without conflict, where each day rose and fell like the steady tide, where every need was met without labor, and where joy was found in the simple unfolding of time. These early men, if they can truly be called men in the way we understand it, were said to have lived long, but not in weariness. Their years did not pile upon their bodies with weight or frailty. Instead, they moved through life as if in a dream, not hurried, not anxious. They needed no tools, no armor, no medicines. They did not fear illness or injury. The air was always temperate, the rains always soft, and the harvests came as if summoned by kindness alone. They spoke little, perhaps, or when they did speak, their voices were gentle and their words slow. There was no urgency, no anger, no quarrel to resolve. It's said that even the animals shared in this peace, that lions did not hunt, and birds sang freely without alarm. The world was not yet divided into predator and prey. It simply existed, breathing, turning, blooming. Each day might begin with the rise of the sun spilling golden light across green meadows. A person might wake under the branches of a fig tree, stretch slowly, and wander down to a nearby stream. The water would be clear and cool, and the fish might shimmer just below the surface, unafraid. After drinking deeply, one might lie on a warm rock and feel the weight of sleep return, because even waking and sleeping had no urgency. The rhythm of life was circular, never rushed, always full. When evening came, the stars would wheel overhead with quiet brilliance. There were no torches needed, no fires built against the dark, for fear was unknown. The moonlight bathed the earth in a soft silver glow, and rest came naturally, as welcome as the cool breeze that drifted through the trees. In this age, love was not born of longing, and friendship was not forged in hardship. These bonds existed, but they were effortless, free from misunderstanding or jealousy. The people of this time did not yearn for more, because more had no meaning. They did not compete or compare, because everything they needed was given, and nothing was hoarded. Harmony was the default, and gratitude was a quiet undercurrent that did not need to be spoken. But such a world, while serene, carried within it the seed of change. Because time itself does not stay still, even in myth. The world, like a dream, begins to stir. And as it stirs, we begin to see the faint outline of a figure standing apart from this perfect age. A figure with a spark, a defiant curiosity, who would look upon this peaceful world and feel a desire to give it something more. That figure is Prometheus, and his story begins just beyond the edges of this golden light. Beyond the soft hills and golden fields of the early world, high among the craggy peaks of Mount Olympus, the gods watched. They were many, radiant, powerful, eternal, yet one among them stood apart. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, was a titan, one of the older beings who had walked the world before Zeus and the Olympians rose to power. Yet unlike his brethren, Prometheus did not retreat when the age of Titans ended. He remained, quiet and observant, drawn to the simple beings below, to mankind. Prometheus saw the lives of men, soft, golden, easy. Yet in his eyes, they were too simple, too dependent. They lived in comfort, yes, but without the spark that makes life more than stillness. He watched them marvel at the stars, but never reach for them, sit beside the fireless dark, and never question its hush. Prometheus saw in man the potential for more, the potential to create, to imagine, to change the world they'd been given. And so, a quiet plan began to form in his mind. A gift that would shift the course of human existence, fire. Fire, in the ancient world, was transformation. It turned raw meat into nourishment, cold spaces into shelter, night into day. It birthed metalwork, pottery, protection, and above all, knowledge. Fire meant power over one's own fate. To give fire to mankind was an act of profound rebellion. Zeus had kept it from them deliberately. In his view, mortals were to remain passive, reliant, a quiet echo of the gods' whims. But Prometheus disagreed. He saw dignity in struggle, beauty in aspiration. He believed that even suffering, when chosen in pursuit of growth, had meaning. And so, one silent night, Prometheus descended from Olympus. Some say he crept through the halls of the gods, wrapping flame in a hollow fennel stalk to hide it. Others say he conjured it himself from the stars. Either way, he brought it down to the valleys, down to the people. He knelt beside them and offered this gift. Imagine the awe, the flickering dance of orange and gold in the night, the first warmth touching their skin, the crackle, the light, the possibility. For the first time, they could push back the darkness. For the first time, they could shape the world. And so fire was passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart. With it came light, and with light came vision, of tools, of shelter, of art. The stillness of the golden age gave way to movement. People began to build, to change, to ask questions. But every gift carries weight. Zeus, from high above, saw what had been done. And though the fires below glowed gently in the night, his heart stirred with anger. The balance had shifted. Mortals would no longer be content in quiet dependence. They would strive, reach, create, and suffer. For where there is ambition, there is consequence. And so, the wheels of myth turned once more. Prometheus would face punishment, and the gods would fashion a new gift, a different gift, one of mystery, one that would be as beautiful as it was fateful. Her name would be Pandora. In the luminous halls of Mount Olympus, carved of cloud and gleaming marble, the gods convened. Far below, the first flickers of fire had begun to rise from the earth. Curling smoke from human hearths now stained the pure sky. Zeus, ruler of the gods, stood at the center of this divine gathering, his gaze fixed on the one who had given it to them. Prometheus had defied him, and while the Titan's punishment would be enduring and severe, Zeus also sought to address what had been awakened in mankind. He would not take fire away. Instead, he would give another gift, a different kind of flame, a flame cloaked in human form. To craft such a being, he summoned the god who could shape form from raw matter, Hephaestus, the divine smith. Crippled in body but mighty in craft, Hephaestus lived in his forge beneath volcanic rock. There, the anvils rang with rhythmic grace, and molten metal flowed like rivers of light. Hephaestus understood form better than any, and with his calloused hands and precise vision, he began to create a figure unlike any seen before. From the damp, rich clay of the earth, Hephaestus molded a woman, her limbs smooth, her posture graceful. Her face was formed with such care that even the gods would pause when she entered a room. He shaped her fingers to move like music, her hair to shimmer like the harvest fields in the afternoon sun. Into her frame, he breathed breath, and with that breath, awareness flickered within her eyes. She was radiant. This was to be a being blessed by all the gods and marked by their divine signatures. Aphrodite came first, weaving beauty into her every feature, giving her the kind of allure that drew eyes and hearts alike. Athena followed, placing within her the spark of craftsmanship, not only to shape cloth and objects, but to spin words and ideas. Hermes gifted her speech, quick and musical, so that her voice would be as enchanting as birdsong. Even lesser gods added their touch, grace in movement, laughter like bells, eyes that held the sea's calm and its mystery. Her name was chosen carefully. Pandora, all gifted, for each divine gift added to her presence made her more complete, more complex, and more compelling. But beneath the wonder of her creation, there was a silent undercurrent, a purpose not spoken aloud. She was not simply made to exist. She was made to be given, to be placed among mankind as a mirror, one that would reflect their desires, their curiosity, and their choices. And with her, she would carry a vessel, a jar, ornate and sealed. It was given to her without explanation, only instruction. It was never to be opened. As Hephaestus put the final touches on her form, brushing golden dust from her shoulders and whispering the breath of life into her chest, she stirred, slowly, like a leaf drifting down from a tree. Her eyes opened. They held wonder and warmth, but also something more subtle, a glint of inquiry, a flicker of awareness. She looked at the world with newness, with the gentle caution of a dream just begun. The gods, satisfied, stood back and admired their creation. She was complete. She would walk among mortals. She would charm, inspire, and change the course of human life forever. And so, the gods prepared her for her descent to the world below, where her presence would echo for eternity. The act of creation, especially in the realm of gods, is never a solitary effort. It is a chorus, a blending of divine traits into something greater than any single hand could shape. And so, after Hephaestus had formed the soft outlines of Pandora's body from earth and clay, she became a canvas for the Olympian pantheon. Each god, in turn, stepped forward to bestow a gift. With every offering, Pandora became more intricate, more luminous, more deeply human. Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, was the first to weave her blessing. With a soft touch, she gave Pandora irresistible charm. Her smile would soothe. Her presence would soften hardened hearts. She would move like a poem in motion, her grace drawing people close with ease. Her eyes, Aphrodite decided, should shimmer with the warmth of rose petals at dawn, capable of reflecting both joy and sorrow. Next came Athena, goddess of wisdom and crafts. To Pandora, she gave the gift of skillful hands and a mind that could weave patterns from thought as easily as from thread. Pandora would be clever, thoughtful, quietly observant. She could create not only objects, but ideas. With a simple glance, she could understand how things fit together, how cloth bends to needle, how words shift like waves. Athena saw this gift as a quiet power, the power of making. Hermes, the swift messenger, stepped forward with a gleam in his eye. He gifted Pandora the art of speech. Her voice would carry the cadence of birdsong and the rhythm of rivers. She would know when to soothe, when to ask, when to draw others in with gentle stories. Demeter gave her a love for growing things, an instinct for seeds, soil, and all things rooted. Pandora would walk among flowers and feel their rhythms, know when the rains were near, and smile when the fruit ripened. She would feel a connection to the earth that had shaped her. Apollo offered music, the ability to hear harmony and to feel it in her being. Pandora would understand the lilt of the lyre and the pulse of rhythm in her breath. When she laughed, it would sound like wind through leaves. When she moved, it would be with the same rhythm as a lullaby. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and the moon, gave her a sense of independence, a stillness that was presence. Pandora would not be swayed easily. Her heart would be curious, yes, but also capable of silence, of wandering under moonlight without fear. Even lesser gods came, each adding small touches, a flicker of humor here, a sigh of wonder there. Hestia gave her a sense of hearth and home, so wherever she stood, comfort would follow. Hera gave her dignity, and Dionysus gave her an understanding of joy and revelry, the ability to dance, to celebrate, to live fully in each moment. And lastly, Zeus himself approached. His gift was sealed within the ornate jar that would travel with her. A vessel, heavy with mystery. It was given without explanation, yet bound to her story from the moment she opened her eyes. With all the gifts in place, Pandora stood transformed, a being of layered qualities, rich and resonant. She was made to reflect all the contradictions, all the wonders and challenges of being alive. A creation of immense care, carrying within her the quiet complexity of the world itself. Names carry weight in the ancient world. They are more than mere labels. They are reflections of essence, symbols woven with significance. And the name Pandora was chosen with great intention. It was a name bestowed by the gods, forged alongside her being, and like her, it carried many meanings folded within a single sound. Pandora. In Greek, Pan means all, and Doron means gift, all gifted. A name that captures the core of her creation, a figure formed not by one god, but by all. A tapestry of divine blessings stitched together into a living presence. She was a collection of gifts in motion, beauty, music, speech, grace, curiosity, warmth, skill. Each attribute a shimmering thread in her design. The name spoke of generosity, abundance, and the fullness of divine favor. Over time, Pandora would come to mean more than the sum of her divine traits. Her name would grow heavier, richer, more nuanced. It would come to echo with consequence, with transformation, with mystery. For the gifts she carried were not all gentle. They were not all visible. Some were subtle, tucked into the corners of her nature. Questions without answers, choices wrapped in beauty, change disguised as charm. To the ancients, the sound of her name became both beautiful and foreboding. She was the one who brings gifts, yes, but also the one who brings what is new, what is unknown. She represented the opening of a chapter that could never be closed again. A threshold between innocence and experience. A turning point in the long unfolding of humanity's story. Even the jar she carried, often mistranslated as a box, held meaning within her name. It was, in a sense, her own gift, a vessel given to her, inseparable from her presence. She was not merely the bearer of the jar. She was the jar, in a metaphorical way, a container of what the gods had sealed inside, both wondrous and weighty. What would be released from within it would shape the world to come, and yet one thing would remain, something quiet and glowing, but that part of the story is still ahead. The name Pandora is soft when spoken aloud. It rolls gently, like a riverstone polished by time. It begins with breath, Pan, and ends with offering, Dora. It is a name both timeless and immediate, both poetic and potent. It asks nothing of the one who hears it, but lingers nonetheless, stirring something deep in the imagination. And so, as Pandora stands upon the edge of Olympus, ready to be guided to the world below, her name precedes her. It is whispered by breezes and carried on the wings of birds. The mortals will soon know her. Her name will settle into the roots of myth, into the hush of fireside stories, into the gentle musings of those who wonder why the world became as it did. From the bright peaks of Olympus, where clouds brushed the feet of gods and the light was always golden, Pandora began her descent. The air around her shimmered slightly, and the earth below welcomed her with soft stillness. In her heart was only curiosity, and in her arms, the jar. Below, the world of men stirred. Since the arrival of fire, life had begun to change. The stillness of the Golden Age had softened into something more dynamic. People had begun to shape wood into shelter, cook food over flame, carve tools from stone. They had learned to listen to the crackle of fire and find comfort in its rhythm. They had also begun to wonder, to question the stars, the seasons, the dreams that flickered behind their eyes. It was into this tender, transforming world that Pandora arrived. Imagine the first moment she stepped onto the earth, the feel of grass beneath her feet, the warmth of sunlight touching her skin. She looked around with eyes wide and calm. Birds fluttered nearby, unafraid. Trees swayed gently, as if bowing. The air was filled with the scent of pine and blossom. It was early morning, and the world held its breath. She walked slowly, her hands cradling the ornate jar. It was sealed with a delicate band, too fine for mortal hands to disturb. The jar was not heavy, but it felt important. She had been told nothing of its contents, only that it was hers to keep, hers to guard. And so she did. In the nearby village, people gathered. They had never seen a figure like Pandora. They whispered in wonder. She looked like them, and yet she moved with a grace they did not possess. Her presence felt familiar, and yet entirely new. The oldest among them felt a stirring of memory, as if they'd heard her name long ago in a dream. Children reached out their hands, and she smiled gently, placing her palm against theirs. Among the crowd stood Prometheus, brother of Prometheus, a titan known for reflection. He had been warned once by his brother to accept no gifts from Zeus, to beware of divine offerings. But that warning, whispered long ago, had faded like mist. And now, as he looked upon Pandora, that warning felt as distant as winter and spring. She was not a threat. She was beauty, kindness, light. She was a song made visible. Pandora and Prometheus exchanged no grand words. But something passed between them, something calm and mutual. He welcomed her into his home, and she accepted without hesitation. In the days that followed, she walked among the people. She learned to tend the hearth, to shape clay into vessels, to sit beside others and listen. Her laughter became a welcome sound. Her hands, gentle and skilled, helped shape the growing community. She was embraced, and the jar remained always nearby, placed in a quiet corner where light touched it at dawn and dusk. Sometimes, when alone, she would glance at it with quiet wonder. She had been told so little, and within her heart, shaped by gods, stirred by speech, music, curiosity, a question began to form. For now, the jar remained closed, and Pandora, all gifted and new to the world, continued to learn, to listen, and to live. Pandora's arrival stirred something unfamiliar in the hearts of those who first encountered her. The people of this early world had seen few changes, and while fire had brought warmth and tools and newfound understanding, it had also awakened uncertainty. Change, even when wrapped in grace, brings with it the rustle of unease. And so, while the villagers welcomed Pandora with smiles and kind gestures, a quiet caution lingered just beneath the surface of something unspoken, something uncertain. She moved with a softness that calmed many, but others watched from the edges of gatherings, curious. Her speech was melodic, her laughter like a spring bubbling over smooth stones, but they had never known a voice like hers. Her presence was unlike their own, radiant, poised, and always accompanied by the sealed jar. That jar, so beautifully crafted and mysterious in its design, became an object of quiet fascination. No one asked about it aloud, but eyes often drifted toward it, especially when Pandora left it resting by the fire. Prometheus, ever open-hearted, welcomed her fully. He prepared a quiet place in his home, a sunlit room filled with woven mats and wooden bowls. He showed her where the wild herbs grew near the stream, where the bees gathered in the morning. He spoke often of his brother, Prometheus, who now endured punishment far from this peaceful valley, and though sorrow occasionally touched his voice, he never once mentioned regret. His hospitality was simple and steady. In Pandora's presence, he found companionship that did not need explanation. The others, too, came to see her as part of their world. Slowly, the hesitation softened. Children brought her small offerings, feathers, polished stones, wildflowers. Elders asked her to sit with them by the fire, telling stories she had never heard. Her silence, when she listened, was complete. Her eyes shone with a quiet understanding. When asked where she came from, she only smiled and said, "Far above, where the clouds drift in golden light." Yet still at night, when the village quieted and stars blinked into view above the hills, some whispered to each other. Who was she truly? What lay within that beautiful jar she never opened? Why had she come now? And what did her presence mean for their lives? These questions curled gently in the quiet corners of thought, like the last wisps of smoke from an evening fire. Pandora herself felt this hesitation in soft ways, in the pause before a greeting, the extra glance, the questions left unspoken. She met them with stillness and did not hurry to explain herself. She simply continued, day by day, to learn the rhythms of this new world, how the fields changed color with the seasons, how bread rose beside the fire, how the scent of lavender lingered in the breeze. Slowly, the earth around her began to welcome her more fully. Birds landed closer. Cats curled near her feet. Even the wind seemed to warm in her presence. The people no longer asked who she was. They simply accepted that she was here and perhaps meant to be. Prometheus had long lived in a world shaped by echoes of his brother's wisdom, of the warnings whispered before the descent of fire, and of the caution that so often accompanies those who dwell near divine events. He was thoughtful, but not driven by foresight. His name itself meant afterthought, and yet there was a gentle integrity in him, a willingness to reflect, to feel deeply, and to embrace the present moment without needing to unravel every thread of the future. When Pandora came into his life, she brought with her a quiet transformation. At first, she was a guest, a new presence in the familiar rhythms of his home. He observed her quietly as she moved through the mornings, her steps light as dewdrops. She noticed small things, the way the sunlight moved across the floorboards, the rustle of leaves outside the window, the way his hands lingered over tasks. She asked questions, always gently. Why does the water change color just before dusk? How do you know when the grain is ready to gather? Do dreams always come in the early hours, or only when the wind turns? And Prometheus, who had spent much of his life listening to the wisdom of others, found himself wanting to answer and to share what he felt. Love, in the early myths, is rarely depicted with subtlety. Here, between Prometheus and Pandora, it unfolded softly, like the slow curling of fern leaves in the morning light. He began to wait for her voice in the morning, to feel comfort in her silences. They planted seeds together, gathered herbs along the riverside, watched the sky shift with the turning of the sun. All the while, something grew, steady, unspoken, real. There were moments when he remembered Prometheus' warning, a caution spoken before the gift was given. Accept no offerings from Zeus. But that warning belonged to a time before Pandora's eyes met his, before her presence softened the air around his home. The gods may have crafted her, yes. The jar may have been given with purpose. But Pandora herself was not a trick. She was present, aware, and full of life. She was no less real for having been formed by divine hands. And so Prometheus made a choice. He chose to love her. He did not ask her about the jar. He did not press her to explain her origin. He accepted her fully, with all the mystery she carried. In doing so, he embraced the unknown as a companion. She, in turn, responded with gentleness, trust, and quiet joy. Their days became shared in harmony. The garden grew under their care. Laughter echoed from the home. The jar remained in its corner, unopened, untouched, a quiet part of their shared space. The jar had always been there, quiet, unmoving, tucked gently into a corner of the room where shadows gathered and sunlight played. Its beauty made it difficult to ignore. The craftsmanship was exquisite, smooth ceramic painted in soft spirals of gold and deep blue, with symbols that shimmered faintly in the changing light. A delicate band of sealing material encircled its lid, unbroken, soft as wax, uncracked. It held an aura of presence, as though it breathed alongside the house itself. Pandora never moved it. She dusted near it, never on it. When she cleaned the floors, she stepped around it with care. She felt reverence. She had been told only this: the jar must never be opened. So she honored that instruction without protest. Days passed. Weeks slipped by, and the jar remained exactly as it had been on the day she first arrived. Yet, in the quiet hours of early morning or the hush just before dusk, her eyes would wander toward it. Not every day, and never for long. But gradually, something in her shifted, a slow unfolding of thought. She began to wonder. What was its purpose? Why had it been given to her, if not to serve some gentle role? What could be inside that required such still silence? It was like the feeling one has when watching a leaf fall from a branch. or hearing a distant sound carried by wind. Curiosity, in its earliest form, begins as a whisper. She found herself noticing things, how the seal gleamed slightly in moonlight, how the design at its base seemed to change with the angle of her gaze. She began to imagine what might lie within. Was it a gift, a sound, a song, a memory sealed long ago? Her thoughts drifted like soft smoke, curling around the edges of this unknown. One evening, as twilight settled across the sky and the stars began to blink awake, Pandora sat by the hearth. The fire was low. Prometheus had gone to the nearby grove to gather fallen branches. The house was still. She turned her gaze once more to the jar. It looked unchanged, silent, harmless. And yet, something within her stirred, a quiet longing to understand. The same longing that had drawn her to the scent of new herbs, to the way clouds moved across the mountains, to the shifting patterns in the river's flow. It was an echo of the gifts she had been given, by the gods, by the world, by her own forming. The moment of opening had not yet arrived, but something within her had begun to lean in that direction. Curiosity moved slowly, quietly, a breeze beneath the door, a feather brushing against thought. In Pandora, curiosity began like this: a gentle wonder, an unspoken question, and over time, it deepened, becoming a yearning to understand. Each day, she passed by the jar. She did not touch it. She did not lift the lid or press against the seal. But her mind began to shape possibilities. Perhaps it held a message, a melody, a light. Perhaps it was a gift yet to be revealed. She thought of the gods who had sent it, and of the silence that had followed its delivery. No instructions, no explanation. Only one rule: it must never be opened. Rules, even gentle ones, whisper more loudly when they sit alone. And the more Pandora honored that silence, the more the silence grew in weight. She began to dream of the jar, soft, hazy dreams where it shimmered and pulsed, or changed shape, or whispered her name. In the daylight, she often forgot the dreams, but the feeling lingered, like dew on the skin. A faint, shimmering awareness. In her waking hours, she told herself that she was not tempted. And it was true, she did not crave to open it. But there was something else. A sense that her presence in this world was incomplete without understanding the whole of her existence, and the jar, beautiful and sealed, was part of that whole. One afternoon, while Prometheus was harvesting near the far edge of the garden, Pandora sat by the window. The light was golden, slanting across the floor in long bands. Dust motes drifted lazily. And there it was, the jar, as always, still glowing faintly in the afternoon light. She rose slowly, drawn by rhythm, like a leaf moving toward water. She knelt beside it. Her fingers brushed the side gently. The surface was cool, smooth, familiar. And yet, as she touched it, she felt the softest shift inside herself, a stir, a flicker of longing. Why was she made? Why was she sent with this? Why must she keep it sealed when everything within her urged her to explore, to know, to connect? She did not act that day. She merely touched the seal, tracing its curve like a thread. But the awareness in her deepened. The jar was part of her story. and the choice it held was quietly growing into hers to make. Prometheus returned before the sun dipped fully, his arms full of leaves and branches. He smiled as he entered, and Pandora turned from the jar, rising smoothly, meeting him with warmth. She said nothing of the moment, and he did not ask. The air had changed, just slightly. The space between the jar and the rest of the room now seemed thinner. The stillness had become charged with attention. A hush settled over the home, deeper than usual, as if the very air had paused to listen. The sun had just begun its descent, painting the sky in strokes of amber and rose. Prometheus had gone to visit a neighbor across the nearby fields, leaving Pandora alone in the fading light. The birds had quieted. The fire in the hearth had grown low. Pandora sat beside the jar, as she often did now, her fingers resting gently on its side. She had stopped wondering why the urge to touch it grew stronger each day. The curiosity was a part of her. It lived in her breath, in the motion of her hands, in the quiet thoughts that filled the space between morning and night. She moved with a sense of inevitability, like the turning of the moon, like the seasons moving in their slow, circular paths. She leaned forward, resting both hands on the cool ceramic. Her fingertips grazed the seal. Then, as though carried on the wind, she heard it, a sound. Not a voice, exactly. Not a word. But a presence. A breath behind the silence. A flicker of something calling to be seen, to be known. It was familiar, as if the jar itself had always known this moment would come. Her fingers pressed gently against the seal. It had always felt smooth, unbroken. But now it yielded slightly. A crack formed, the sound impossibly soft, like the sigh of a feather brushing across stone. The lid shifted, no more than the width of a fingernail. And in that space, something moved. A thin ribbon of shimmering mist rose, curling upward like smoke from incense. It carried no color, yet shimmered with all colors. It made no sound, yet seemed to vibrate with presence. Pandora sat frozen, eyes wide with awe. Then, one by one, shapes began to unfurl from the jar. Forms, abstract, translucent, full of motion and meaning. They floated with grace. Their essence was unmistakable. The first was sorrow. It passed her cheek like a breeze, cool and long. It carried memories not yet lived, the ache of loss, the softness of longing. Next came illness, not as plague, but as a slowing, a heaviness in the limbs, a reminder of the body's limits. Then came fatigue, and worry, and weariness of spirit. Each drifted upward, circling once before slipping through the cracks of the wooden home, spreading gently into the world. Pandora sat still, hands resting on her lap, watching as what had been sealed now danced free. A tear slid down her cheek. She understood. These were not punishments. They were companions of growth. They were the other side of fire, the shadows cast by light. As the final shape floated upward, the lid of the jar slipped gently closed again. It sealed itself with no effort from her hands. The mist cleared. The room grew still. And in the silence that followed, she felt something else, something resting at the bottom of the jar. It glowed softly, like an ember, like the first star at twilight. Hope. Hope does not flee. Hope stays. And in that moment, Pandora placed her hands upon the jar once more to hold it. Outside, the wind had picked up slightly. The sky deepened into velvet. The world had changed completely. The world had changed through the silent passage of unseen shapes. From the moment the seal on Pandora's jar lifted, something delicate shifted in the air. What once had been a world of golden stillness and soft rhythms now held a new undercurrent. The spirits released that evening moved quietly, invisibly, yet they touched every corner of life with gentle persistence. Sorrow, the first to drift from the jar, settled like a low mist over the hills, wrapping itself around memories and thoughts. For the first time, humans began to feel the ache of absence, the tenderness of missing someone, the soft pull of melancholy when recalling better days. Tears were shed from that deep sense of remembering something just out of reach. And yet, within sorrow was depth. It allowed reflection, the kind that deepened bonds and made joys shine more brightly when they came. Illness followed, quiet as a shadow. It crept into limbs, into breath, into bone. It taught people of their fragility, that the body, like the seasons, could change, weaken, and recover. Illness slowed time. It brought the need for care, for patience, for rest. And with it came tenderness. For when a child's brow grew warm, or an elder's steps slowed, others stepped forward to comfort, to sit beside, to listen. The world learned empathy through the touch of illness. Next came weariness. Fatigue settled into shoulders and backs, a reminder that creation and labor carried cost. It was through this spirit that sleep grew sacred, that moments of stillness gained meaning. People began to seek shade in the afternoon, to share the load, to listen to their bodies. And in this slowing, in this learned balance, beauty was found. Envy arrived too, an invisible shape that moved between glances and thoughts. It stirred comparison, the subtle sense of longing for what another had. But envy too brought growth. It nudged people to ask, what do I truly need? What do I truly value? And from that question, clarity began to form. Doubt fluttered after, like a moth through the dusk. It touched decision-making, relationships, the stories told to children. Yet doubt also opened doors. It whispered, what if, and why not? It allowed new stories to take shape, new inventions to emerge. With it came invention, experimentation, learning. With each spirit that entered the world, humans adjusted. They wept, but they also consoled. They ached, but also healed. They faltered, but found strength in others. The spirits were not punishments. They were companions on the path of being alive, the inevitable contrasts that made life vivid, layered, whole. Pandora watched this unfolding with quiet awareness. She did not close her eyes to the sorrow. She did not turn away from the fatigue. She sat with them. She walked among the people and saw how they changed. Some days, she too felt heavy, and others, she felt light. She learned to sing lullabies for the grieving, to gather herbs for the ailing, to hold a hand when no words would do. And through it all, she knew that something had remained behind, something that had not escaped. Hope. Sorrow was the first spirit to breathe into the world, and it came as a sigh. It lingered, drifting like the faint mist that gathers in the early morning just before the sun rises. It curled around hearts in quiet moments, settling gently beside those who had lost or who remembered something long gone. Before sorrow came, people had known only the warmth of life, the constancy of now. But sorrow introduced absence, the realization that something, once held, might be no more. It was this spirit that brought the tear, the long pause, the distant gaze. It whispered of awareness. Through it, people came to feel the shape of joy after it had passed, how it echoed, how it lingered sweetly, even as it faded. With sorrow came tenderness, the way one sits beside another who grieves. The hush of voices at twilight, speaking of someone missed. The offerings placed on stone, the candles lit for memory. It shaped compassion into action. Where there was sorrow, there was also comfort, arms wrapped around shoulders, hands held across silence, hearts open not to fix, but simply to be near. Illness followed, quiet, uninvited, yet inevitable. It came on cool winds and in stillness. Bodies, once strong, would sometimes grow weak. Breaths, once steady, would sometimes become strained. Illness touched the young and the old without discrimination. But it did not come to destroy. It came to slow, to soften, to teach. Before illness, there had been no need for rest. Now people learned the rhythm of healing. They discovered the warmth of broth made with care, the gentleness of a cloth on a fevered brow, the patience of waiting beside someone as they slept. They began to listen more closely to the signals of their own bodies, to the quiet needs of others. Illness brought awareness, humility, and attentiveness. Children were taught to care for their elders. Neighbors looked after one another. Healing became a shared effort. Though it sometimes brought pain, illness also knit people together. It made health precious, made laughter dare, made touch sacred. And so these two spirits, sorrow and illness, though often seen as burdens, also carried gifts. They deepened the heart. They expanded the soul. They created space for gentleness, for care, for the simple grace of being present. Pandora, as she watched these changes, felt both the weight and the wonder of them. She walked among the people with quiet eyes. She tended to the ill, sat with the grieving, and learned the words of comfort. When the last of the spirits had risen, sorrow, illness, fatigue, envy, doubt, and more, and their silent passage had filled the world with new textures of experience, the jar grew quiet again. Its lid, once loosened, now rested softly in place, as if it had always belonged that way. The mist had vanished, the glow dimmed. But Pandora, kneeling beside it in the quiet of her home, felt something still. There was a steady presence within the jar. It did not try to escape. It did not drift like the others. It stayed. Pandora leaned forward, her fingers resting once more on the smooth ceramic. She listened, not with her ears, but with that deeper sense, the part of her formed by the gods, shaped by speech and music and memory. And there, at the very bottom of the jar, she felt it, hope. It glowed, softly, patiently, a gentle ember in the dark. It had not risen when the others fled, because it was not meant to leave. It was meant to remain. Hope is not a spirit that moves through the world like a gust of wind. It does not enter uninvited or stir chaos. It waits. It waits in hearts, in thoughts, in quiet corners of the mind. It lives in stories told beside fires, in lullabies hummed to restless children, in the first green bud after a long winter. It exists wherever the possibility of light remains, even in the deepest night. Pandora gradually understood this. As she sat beside the closed jar, she realized that hope had never been meant to fly free. It was too precious, too easily scattered. It needed stillness. It needed choosing. It needed belief. And so she left the jar as it was, sealed, with hope glowing inside. Preserved. A promise within reach, held close. From that day on, when sorrow swept through the village, or illness dimmed the eyes of the strong, Pandora would sit beside the jar. She would place her hand gently on its lid and breathe deeply. And somehow, that quiet act would restore a sense of balance. The world had changed. It had grown more complex, but it had not lost its light. Hope became the soft thread woven through the lives of all who lived. It was there in the child learning to walk, in the farmer planting seeds, in the elder telling stories of things long past. It was in every glance shared between those who endured together, who chose each day to continue. Time moved gently onward, as it always does, carrying the story of Pandora with it. Her tale, shaped by divine intention and human consequence, settled into the hearts of poets, philosophers, and dreamers. It became a whisper in the great tapestry of human storytelling, retold because of its truth, soft, profound, layered with meaning. In the ancient world, stories were mirrors. They helped people see not only the world around them, but the world within. Pandora's story offered such a mirror. It reflected the complexity of being alive, how beauty and burden can coexist, how choice carries weight, how the unknown is both frightening and filled with wonder. Philosophers pondered her tale in stone academies and shaded gardens. Some saw it as a parable of temptation, a caution against curiosity. Others saw it as the beginning of human experience, marking the point where innocence gave way to knowledge. But always, there was a recognition that the story held more than blame. It held depth. Writers and artists across generations reimagined Pandora's image. Sometimes she appeared radiant, cloaked in golden light. Other times she was solemn, her hands resting on the sealed jar, her eyes filled with thought. Always the jar remained, symbolic, silent, powerful. And always hope remained within it. Even the idea of the box, a mistranslation of the original word for jar, carried with it a sense of containment and mystery. A vessel, ornate and closed, holding within it the essence of life's dual nature, joy and sorrow, gift and trial, shadow and light. Over time, the story adapted, softened, grew roots in many cultures. It was no longer merely a Greek myth. It became a universal reflection of questions that arise in childhood, of the choices made in adulthood, of the quiet endurance carried in old age. People related to as someone deeply human, curious, loving, brave, and at times unsure. Pandora's name came to live in language and art, in literature and song. She became a symbol of the beauty and complexity, the way every step forward carries both light and shadow, the way even in our hardest moments, something glowing waits to be found. And through it all, hope never left the jar. It remained, steady and quiet. It reminded those who heard the story that no matter what was released, no matter how the world might change or hearts might ache, something gentle always stayed behind, ready to be remembered. Pandora's story, quiet as it is, offers more than myth. It offers a reflection on balance, the delicate harmony between wonder and restraint, between knowing and waiting. And within that reflection lies a lesson whispered gently to those who pause long enough to listen. Curiosity in Pandora's tale is not a flaw. It is not a rebellious fire, nor a reckless act. It is a thread, subtle and natural, that runs through all sentient life. To wonder is to be alive. It is to seek, to lean toward the unknown, not out of defiance, but from a deep desire to understand. Pandora was not warned of danger. She was told only that the jar must not be opened. And yet, as her days unfolded and the presence of the jar became part of her life, the question of why began to shimmer quietly in her thoughts. In this, the story teaches that even the gentlest among us carry questions. And in carrying them, we grow. The lesson is that choice carries consequence, and consequence carries depth. When Pandora lifted the lid, she did not unleash destruction. She simply revealed what had been waiting, the invisible truths of existence. Sorrow, illness, fatigue, doubt. Not punishments, but realities. Shared threads that connect all who live. And alongside them, hope remained. This balance between curiosity and caution, between action and rest, is not easy. But it is essential. Pandora's story gently reminds us that life is not lived in absolutes. We are meant to question, to learn, to change, but also to pause, to reflect, to honor the unknown. Wisdom lives not in always knowing, but in knowing when to ask. Prometheus, too, teaches this balance. He chose to love without full understanding. He chose to trust despite warning. And while his choice brought complexity, it also brought connection. His trust created space for healing, for learning, for companionship. Together, Pandora and Prometheus show us that life is layered, nuanced, full of choices that shape not only the world around us, but the world within. And the story, softly told, continues to hold space for all those who are learning to balance their own jars, the questions they carry, the hopes they guard, the changes they welcome. As centuries slipped by like gentle waves upon a quiet shore, Pandora's story traveled with the patience of a lantern passed from hand to hand. Across lands, through languages, and into different eras, her tale found its way into new hearts, reshaped by devotion. Always it returned, its core intact, its glow unchanged. In ancient Greece, where the story was first spoken by poets like Hesiod, Pandora became a figure of both reverence and contemplation. Her name was carried through the halls of learning and the open-air theaters, where her tale was told in scrolls and echoed in amphitheaters under the sky. She was examined, a symbol, a muse, a mystery. Her jar became a metaphor whispered among thinkers, her name a gentle inquiry into the nature of human choice. Later, in Roman times and into the medieval world, her story softened even further. Artists painted her as a graceful figure, seated beside a vessel bathed in light. Poets described her beauty, her gifts, her quiet strength. She appeared in tapestries and illuminated manuscripts, her image woven into the delicate patterns of history. In Renaissance Europe, with its revival of classical ideas, Pandora's tale was reborn again. Thinkers and painters returned to her myth, this time emphasizing the richness of her inner world. She came to symbolize the birth of experience itself, the moment when simplicity gave way to depth, when innocence made space for understanding. Even into the modern world, Pandora remains, in literature, in philosophy, in everyday language. Her box, though originally a jar, became a phrase of its own. To open Pandora's box became shorthand for awakening something vast, unknown, transformative. Yet the phrase rarely mentions the hope that remains. That quiet glow, that small, persistent presence at the bottom, still flickers, often unspoken, but always there. And so, in homes across the world, in quiet moments before sleep, in stories passed from parent to child, Pandora lives on. Her name is spoken softly in classrooms, drawn in the margins of notebooks, painted on canvas, whispered in dreams. Her story continues because it holds within it something each of us recognizes: the moment of decision, the question at the heart, the light that remains after the darkness drifts through. And now, dear listener, the tale draws gently to a close. The winds have stilled. The fire has dimmed to a low, glowing ember. The world of ancient myth has softened into quiet. Pandora's journey, her creation, her arrival, the slow awakening of her curiosity, and the soft opening of the jar, all now rest in the calm of memory. The shapes that once floated out into the world settle beside us now, like old companions, familiar and gentle. It is in the nature of stories like this to continue long after the final word. They ripple through thought. They drift into dreams. Perhaps tonight, as you rest, you'll carry a fragment of Pandora's tale with you, the hush of golden mornings in the mythic past, the feel of clay warmed by divine hands, the slow curve of curiosity as it grows into understanding. We began our journey in a golden age, a place of perfect peace and effortless joy. We walked through the shaping of Pandora, gifted by gods, radiant and thoughtful. We followed her into a world just beginning to learn what it means to feel deeply, to love, to grieve, to question. We opened the jar alongside her, and we sat quietly as sorrow and illness slipped into the world. Now, as the night deepens, we return to something even older than myth, to that quiet part of ourselves that understands what it means to hope. For in all the complexity of life, there is always something that remains. A glow that doesn't fade. A whisper that stays near. Hope. It waits patiently at the bottom of every story, in the heart of every moment, in the stillness between each breath. It's there now, just beneath the surface, soft, glowing, complete. So let us rest beside Pandora in the hush of her story. Let us close our eyes and drift gently into sleep, with the knowledge that even in the presence of sorrow or doubt, something luminous remains. The stars above shine faintly. The earth below is still, and the jar, sealed once more, glows with quiet light in the quiet night. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey. I hope it brought you a little peace, a little wonder, and a little closer to rest. Until next time, sweet dreams.